The Soviet Union, 1917 to 1964. Political ideologies: Marxism, Leninism, and totalitarianism. Just so you know, you won't be specifically tested on these ideologies, but knowing them will help you understand why the communist leaders ruled or acted the way that they did. Marxism. The process of Marxism, you have to think of it like a phase. So phase 1 is feudal lords versus serfs and peasants, and the outcome would be feudalism. Phase 2 is city life versus guilds, so city and towns, I guess, or peasant countryside. Next is phase 3, the bourgeoisie versus proletariat, which is capitalism. And then, according to Marxism, there would be a revolution where the proletariat will overthrow the bourgeoisie, and communism will be the outcome of that. For Marxism, the class struggle is a normal thing, and that the revolution should occur naturally with no interference, and this will lead eventually to a classless society. Populism. The process for populism is landowners versus peasants, where the outcome is feudalism, and then the educated city people will go out to the countryside, educate the peasantry. The peasantry will have a class awakening and rise up and seize land for themselves, so that the outcome will be agrarian communism. Populists wanted a revolution through class awakening, education of the peasantry. The peasantry will realize their situation and want to revolt, and this will all lead to a classless society based on the mere. Leninism is based on Marxism but differs slightly. Its process is feudal lord versus serfs and peasants, where the outcome is feudalism, city life versus guilds. Skip entirely the capitalist stage and get straight onto communism. Lenin wanted to interfere and accelerate the process, which is what Marxism is not about at all. He wanted to have a vanguard put in place for the proletariat, which is a group of people that were to protect them. He wanted a very violent revolution, whilst Marxism wanted a more peaceful revolution. And he wanted a classless society with the dictatorship of the proletariat. Lenin's policies, 1917 to 1921, were they ideological or pragmatic? Ideological means that he will be working based on relating to a system of ideas and ideals, especially concerning economic or political theory or policy. A few ideological policies he had was the nationalization of land in October of 1917. This abolished private ownership of land and allowed peasant land seizures. Another policy was the Workers' Control Decree a month later. This gave workers the power to supervise management of the factories and decide how they were run. Unfortunately, Lenin acted pragmatically a lot of the time, which means he dealt with things sensibly and realistically in a way that is based on practical rather than theoretical considerations, aka it was more to keep himself in power than for the people. At the end of the war, he was committed to international communism, but Lenin did promise peace and therefore left the war and signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. Comintern, 1919. This was an organization to promote world revolution, and in 1920 it had its second meeting with 37 countries. All members of Comintern had to structure their politics and ideologies in line with Soviet communism. War communism. This was an economic policy where grain was taken by force from the peasants, and the state took control of companies and decided what to produce. This took away the freedoms that people had gained from the Workers' Control Decree and all that. The Kronstadt uprising of March 1921. This was when the Kronstadt sailors revolted, 150,000 men demanded new elections as the party wasn't as socialist as they expected. The Red Army was sent to crush it. The new economic policy. This allowed small capitalist practices to run which were not state-controlled. Peasants were also allowed to sell their surplus grain for profit. A ban on factions. If a member of the Bolshevik Party did not show unity, they were immediately banned and expelled from the party. Stalin used this more later to remove political opponents. We will be going through each of these in more depth in the next few videos.